not managed to do the gluing, the waxing, and they think, oh well, I've not done it. I hope that that's not the case, because it doesn't matter. Obviously, I imagine that most people would just watch this and do it afterwards, which is totally fine.
Yeah, and I said exactly that in the email, and you know, it's no pressure. And quite often it's quite nice just to see the whole process in one go, isn't it, before you start yourself. So's here. I'll just let her in.
Okay.
Morning, So.
Hello.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. Well, if we make a start.
Okie dokie. I'll move this back. Yeah, I'll move it back to get to it. There we go. That's a bit better.
I hope you've all had a good week, everyone, and you've had a little look at the last week's video, the refresher. I don't know whether anyone's had a chance to come up with a design and do any waxing as yet.
Yeah, but it's not an issue at all if you haven't. That's fine. You
can do that. Catherine's design. That looks amazing.
Oh, let me look. I can't see. Oh, that looks beautiful. You went for a peacock design. And there's a butterfly on it. Oh, that's lovely.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
That is gorgeous.
Well, it's one thing doing it on paper, another thing doing it with the wax. But we'll just go with it.
Yeah, I do think you need the thicker line with this PVA is better. Like you can do really small lines and detail with the wax and using a chanting or a really small brush. But with this PVA, I think it's more important to sort of have that resist and for it to block, to stop the colours from merging, because it's just, yeah, what I found that when it was runnier, it just wasn't working for me at all. It sort of seeped into the fabric a bit too much. So it just needs to be sort of that consistency, that icing consistency to to get on the fabric how you want. Right, so I'm not expecting anyone to do this at live time. You can do it afterwards, that's absolutely fine. But you need some kind of jars or plastic containers. You need a measuring jug if you've got it. If you've not, just anything that will hold about 500 millilitres of water. And the first job is to empty, you should have a brown paper little envelope of urea. And that's the first job, to make up the urea water. So you put that into whatever receptacle you're using, boil the kettle, and just put a little bit, like maybe about 15 millilitres of boiling water in with the packet of urea, and just dissolve that urea into the water. It's just important to initially use that boiling water to dissolve it, because with cold water it doesn't really dissolve, it's kind of like salt. So the urea it slows the dyeing process down, just so that the dyes fix into the fabric a bit better. So that's why we use that with water to mix with the dyes. So the first thing, you should dissolve the urea into a jug that holds about 500 millilitres, because that's how much you're going to need. It's 125 millilitres of urea water to each packet of dye that you've got. So you should have 4 packets of dyes, and it's 125 millilitres of, but if you've not got a measuring jug, then as long as you can work out, this is 500 millilitres, So if you've got anything that holds, it's a little bit more actually, it's about 600. But anything that holds that amount of water, then you can just split evenly between your dye packets. And so for this next bit, sorry, it is going to be me, but feel free to ask questions at any point. But for this bit, it's going to be me talking. It's good to wear a mask at this point, just because when they're in powder form, these protein dyes can be a bit toxic. Get them back up. Right, so I'm going to mix the red dye first. Do be careful. I'll just tell you about, I took off the plastic, but for this part, for the painting process, so when it was the waxing process, it was the 2 layers of newsprint, then the plastic, then the design, then the plastic, and then the silk. For this one, I'd probably go plastic on the table, then you double sheets of newsprint, and then just the silk on top of that. Because if you have got your design underneath, which you can, it does make it easier, but obviously then the dye is going to penetrate that, and your design is then going to have dye on it. So if you wanted at any point to do something else with your design, or do it again on another piece of silk, it's going to have dye on it, so that will potentially affect, because at some point the dye might get on the silk. So yeah, I've just got it. I've not got the plastic down because this table's like absolutely disgusting, so it doesn't really matter. But I do think if you try and do it in a place where you're not that bothered about the table, because the dye does have it can get everywhere. You are going to apply quite a lot of dye to it. So yeah, plastic down, and then the 2 layers of the newsprint taped out, and then the silk laid out on the top. And you just want to tape it as flat as you can. Yeah, right, back to mixing the dyes. So I'm doing red here. So there's about 7 grams in each of these dye packets. And it's 125 millilitres to 7 grams of dye of the urea water. So it's good if you've got a little bit of tape or stickers or something, that, because you realise that when you make the dyes up, they don't always, that it's impossible to tell what the colours are. They don't always look like what, but that is why as well you should have little scraps of silk in there like this, which are for dipping in to the dyes to tell what colour they are, and also just when you're mixing, because you should have the primary colours, a yellow, a red and a blue, and a bonus colour of either, I think it might be lime or purple. But when we're mixing colours, say we'll make an orange by mixing the magenta red and the yellow, we want to do it bit by bit, and we can test, because it might be too red or it might be too yellow. So that's what those are for. Right, so we're ready to start making this colour up. So first off, you just want to put a splash in there, like a tiny little splash, and you want to get a brush might be a good idea as well if you do have other brushes. The budget didn't stretch to getting really fancy brushes for everybody, so the ones that you've got were good for the waxing, but you might, if you've got any bigger paint brushes, just any normal paint brushes, the one I'm using here is just because they hold a bit more dye than those little ones that you've got. So splash of water, and because it is a powder dye and it's quite grainy, you just want to work, you want to get into all of the bits where it's sticking to the bottom of the jar you're using or whatever, and you just want to work it so it's a bit like a paste, but it's just it's quite evenly, it's not got any chunks in there, and then it should be like, you should see that it's like not all bitty and got loads of chunks of dye left in there, like should have dissolved into the water a bit, into like a sauce. And then you want to put a bit, just a little bit less than 125, so that, yeah, about 120. And I'm on, so where I'm gonna go. It is good if you've got a measuring jug, but if you don't worry, it doesn't have to be super accurate. Just split the water, as I've said. It's a bit more than that. So that's the red made up. Also, it's quite good to have more brushes, because once that's been in the red dye, it'll be, you need to wash it under the tap to get rid of any of the dye. Right, so next one, blue. But the tape or the stickers are quite good, just to, you can label them there so you can know which one's what. The red's quite clearly is quite red, but some of them it's pretty hard to tell when you've mixed up quite a few. I'd make sure you're doing it a little bit away from your silk as well, because you will, it is quite easy to splash bits of colour on there. So a dash. And you get it into a nice paste like you're making a sauce. And then
Lizzie, could you move a bit further along, or move your laptop round, because can't actually see what you're doing.
on this side.
That's it, right. Oh.
If you've got it on gallery view, Catherine, but Lizzie's got two cameras actually, so although
Right,
one's a bit further away, but
that's fine, I can see now.
good.
Yeah. So it's a page.
Yeah, you just work it with your brush a bit just to make sure it's all dissolved and there's no bits stuck at the bottom. You want it to be a nice even dye and all of the particles of the protein dye to be dissolved. Next one, yellow. And so you really want about 6 to 7 little plastic pots or Tupperware or these old soup containers that I've got to use there, whatever you've got. Because yeah, you're going to make up probably about 6 or 7 different colours. Ooh, splash it everywhere. Do be careful not to try and splash it. I've got it on my forehead now, so it might be on my forehead for a while. Because yeah, it will dye your skin. I mean, it does go away, but yeah, there's been many a times we've been midway through a big Batik project and I've had red or blue hands for a while. I come home actually and Emrys is like disgusted by the colour of my hands. My 5-year-old child. It's like looking at me like, oh, mummy, disgusting. For some reason, some of them dissolve better than others, and the yellow is one that you have to work quite a lot. It's just quite grainy and just need that extra bit of working it with a brush. I've managed to get powder dye everywhere. And then the last one, the colour that I've got is purple.
Kelly said that she got a hole in the gloves. She doesn't know how and ended up with a yellow finger.
Oh no. Yeah, sorry, they weren't the best gloves. They were yeah, quite thin plastic ones. If you do have any others, feel free to use them. But yeah, and the yellow as soon like because it's not as strong, that can just look like you've got like fag stained fingers or hands for a while, which isn't the nicest. You've got jaundice or something. Yeah. Right, so let's check those colours and see what they're looking like. I've got a cup of fruit tea here, like a berry tea, and I keep looking at it thinking it's the red dye, so I want to put that one out of the way. We don't want dipping brushes in there. Right, I'm going to take my mask off now. Once you've done with the mixing process, I'd leave the gloves on. The gloves are good to stay on because they will protect your hands from getting dyed. But yeah, it's only that just stopping that you don't want to inhale any of the dye particles when you're mixing. Right, so we're just going to check what the colours are saying. The magenta is a bit more of a pinky red, just because that's the, so yeah, that is, it's quite pinky. And let's just check the blue. Nice strong colour. This should be a nice purple anyway. Yeah. I might mix a bit of that purple with a bit of the magenta to get more of a pinky purple. And let's just check the yellow. It should be a really bright light yellow. Yeah. Can't really see that, can you? Right, so next job we're going to make an orange. So in fact, we'll put the yellow in first, 'cause I think it's easier. So I'm going to drop a bit of that in there. And then literally drop by drop, because this red is quite intense. We're just going to drop a few drops in. That was actually quite a bit. Give it a shake. I'm going to have a look at that now, because I think that's going to be quite a dark orange already. Yeah, that's already a pretty good orange. I might actually add a little bit of yellow back to that. Okay, and then a green. I was going to think, do I need a green? Because I know my design is a sun, but we do have, there's a few little flowers on each of the corners which have got leaves attached, and they can be green, so we will make a green. Again, I'd start with the yellow. And literally just add a drop of blue. Oh. And it's gone green straight away. Let's get a little bit of the silk to dip that in, because I think that's going to be, oh, that's quite a nice green, actually. Quite a bright green, but it's quite a nice green. And I think if you wanted more of an earthy sort of green, you could add like a little drop, tiny drop of red, and you would get more of an olive. But I think we'll see. What you can do as well, because you will have to do a second coat, so it does need 2 coats of the paint. And you can always change tones and shades of the colour at that point. Yeah, because when you add a second coat, you can sort of deepen the colours, or you can add a completely different colour to the one you've added. Say you've added a yellow, and you wanted to then do like a blend over the top. You could use the magenta and the yellow together, and then you would get an orange in the middle. So you can like, you can sort of like decide to do something slightly different on the second coat to create a slight effect or whatever. So we're going to go for it. And there might be, I actually made a really nice colour a couple of weeks ago when I was having a go at that other design that I did. And that was, it was almost like a, so that was from mixing a little bit of the yellow, and then a little bit of the magenta, and then a tiny bit of blue, sort of like how you would just mix paint generally. And that sort of made a really nice peachy fleshy colour that I used for the face. So you can make lots of different colours. Just have a play. And it doesn't really matter if you, because there's quite a lot of blue there, like 125 millilitres is quite a lot really for this little square of fabric. So it doesn't matter, say, if you make a disgusting colour and you don't really end up using it. Just don't, if you know you're sort of going to do something different and try and put a few of the different colours together, then just use a tiny bit of it so you're not like wasting a lot. Let's go for it. I'm going to go with the yellow first because I think on the main bit of the sun here, I want to create a bit of a blending sort of effect. So I'm going to go with this pretty intense yellow. I'm hoping that you should be able, as soon as I start putting the dye on this silk, you should be able to see it.
Yeah, you do it really well. I'm guessing that's the building work in the background.
Yeah, it's so noisy.
Sorry, everyone. It's not the most atmospheric.
No. It's good that the obviously it's active and it's happening, but yeah, it's been a bit noisy this morning. Sorry.
But it means that the new Vale is on its way, so hopefully you'll be able to see it in person later this year.
It's exciting. Oh, what's good? What I might actually go and get, because I've not got any. I'm going to go do that now, actually. It's good to have a little bit of kitchen roll, a little bit of blue roll, just in case you get it on the glue, on the wax. It's just good to dab it up. And also, if you realise you've made a mistake and you've put a colour you didn't want, you can, if you wet a little bit of kitchen roll or blue roll, you can try and dab the dye back out of the fabric, and it does sort of work. And yeah, I'll just do 1 second.
So Catherine, are you at painting stage? Oh, sorry, you're on mute. Does that mean you have to get up? Don't worry if you have to get up. You can tell us next time.
Right. I am, I think.
Oh, brilliant.
So I need yellow.
And what about you, Soaping? Are you just watching and then catching up later? Oh, sorry, you're also on mute.
I am watching because I have already finished.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
I can show you my.
Oh, yes, please do.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look at that. That's incredible.
I can't. Let me see, so. Oh, wow, that looks beautiful.
Oh, I can't see. I've lost. Where have I lost?
How do I make it?
Options.
Because last time I participated the missing patch.
Yes.
I still have the color left, so I use that one.
Ah, there we are. Right. Oh,
Oh, that's beautiful.
Saved it. That's good.
Oh. Right.
I've got a yellow head.
Oh, well done, so.
I find that it's very difficult to do some delicate design because it's very difficult to do that because the pen the infiltration is too quick, so the line will not be fine. And some of the color I use another those color is the fabric colors. I use also fabric colors to to make the color more more bright.
Yes.
And because there's two it's the number of color is not sufficient, so I use some of fabric color
Great.
that I already get, and I found that there's a method is better by using the, when you color the silk, and you use this one to place the silk or with this
Stretch it out.
embroidery,
It's an embroidery hoop.
and then you can put it under the light, and then you can color it much easier, and then you can you can see that how quick the color will penetrate, and then you can control the color more easily.
Oh, great. That's really good to know. That's really handy.
Yeah, it's a good idea to use the embroidery hoop. I've not thought of that because it stretches it out. Because that is can be difficult when you really want the design to lay flat if you're doing more fine detail. I do think
If I put the silk on the table, and the under one is the plastic, it will not absorb the color, and it will spread over very quickly. So I also use kitchen paper, put it beneath, and then it will absorb some of the color, so that it will not spread too fast, and effect is better. That's my experience.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you for sharing. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I do think that it is quite difficult to get that fine line with the PVA. Some people, though, who sent the missing patch back, I'm amazed at the kind of detail they've got with the PVA, because it is much easier with wax. But yeah, you can blend colours together here. I'm just going to put some orange in the edges, some yellow on the middle of my sun, and I'm doing orange just on the edge. Yeah, if any of you do get time to watch that documentary that I sent you, it's just a 20-minute one about Indonesian, Javanese batik, and it was fascinating, all the different processes.
We watched that. It was really good.
Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad.
Yeah, because they put them out in the sun to dry, didn't they? The long strips.
Yeah, and I loved watching them do the folding. Like, it was quite. I think that was a kind of technique that you look at it and go, "Oh, that's really easy, scrunching that fabric like that." But he was doing it so evenly.
Yeah.
If we had to go at it, it would just look a big mess.
Yeah, it looked quite random as you were doing it, but it was perfect, weren't it, when it was finished?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Do you ever do that at Global Grooves and Cabasa, Lizzie? Ever scrunch
The only time we've done something like that is we did a project. We made an ice queen for Preston Caribbean Carnival, and we did ice dyeing for that. So I wrapped, and I also did some sort of shibori dyeing, which is where you it's sort of like tie dyeing, and where you wrap in and tie in a specific way, and then you lay onto it was like chicken wire, I think we used, on a tub. So you lay the fabric on and you put the ice on top of that, and then sprinkle the dye on top of the ice, and then the ice melts and the dye just penetrates in specific bits. So it's really like, it creates a kind of really sort of like kind of a tie-dye effect, but it almost looks like a glacier kind of. It's like very distinct lines, and so that was quite nice. It was like, yeah, cracks of dye. So we've done something like that before, but we've never like folded the fabric before. But they use soda ash in that technique on that video we watched, whereas you can't do that with silk because it shreds the silk, it makes holes in the silk. You can do it with cotton, and we do use soda ash with cotton. We soak it in cotton before the dyeing process, but you can't use that with silk because it does shred the silk. Sorry, it's so noisy. Loud builders.
Lizzie, when people are getting up to speed with this technique, would you advise with your design having a sort of paper version with the colour so you can almost follow what you're doing? Because I should imagine working out where the blends are and the different colours and stuff, that must be quite tricky if you're not used to it.
Yeah, that's totally a good thing to do if you wanted to do that. You could, if you're not going to use your design again for anything, you could just paint before you have a go on the silk. You could just paint your design with the dyes that you've made up. So because obviously they're specific colours, because to try and then they're always going to be these. They've got a specific look, really, the Procyon dyes. They're not going to look. You're not going to be able to get a shade of acrylic paint from the dyes, in particular. So yeah, that's a good. We do that sometimes before when we're trying to figure out. Say we're designing some costumes and we're trying to figure out what colours to use. We will paint the design first just to see. Oh yeah, we'll mix quite a few dyes up and then we'll paint the design just to decide that. Oh yeah, that brown looks really nice. That's intense red. And the mustard and the jade, they work really well together. Let's use those colours or whatever. So yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. Quite quiet with no Andy this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if he's got any further with his miniatures. Let's find out. Have you attempted any painting yet, Catherine? You mentioned you were going to look at some watercolours, perhaps.
Well, I've done a heron and in the landscape, and would you believe orangutan?
Really?
Well, that is for I've got twin grandsons, aged 3.
Oh,
And so I asked them what their favourite things were, and I knew that Joseph would say orangutan. No, Joseph would say heron, because there is a heron that appears near them across the road, actually, and so he goes mad when he sees that, and he recognises herons wherever they are. And so I asked Henry, and he said orangutan. I thought, oh, okay. I felt okay with the heron, but the orangutan, well, it proved a bit challenging.
yeah, I bet.
But I did it, and they recognised it, so
That's good. That's really good.
so that was fine. I enjoyed doing them. And we'll see. So they've got them all framed up on in their room on the wall.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. I have a feeling my wax isn't thick enough. It's kind of bleeding a bit. I'm running.
If you do think that's the case and you don't want that sort of effect, then you can just sort of stop what you're doing and
Go over it again.
Yeah. If you've still got some PVA, you can. Obviously, I wouldn't apply it to where you've already applied the dye and wait for it to dry, but you can. Because you will then kind of get a double waxing effect. So if you've applied the dye, you can let it dry, and then I'd leave it a day, and then go back to it, sort of say the day after, like not the day after, but the day after that, and then apply the wax to those areas, because when you apply a second coat, you can still get, although there will be a little bit of dye in where you've applied, if you apply a second coat of dye over that bit you've painted, so you put the wax there, but if you applied dye again to that, you would have more of an intense colour, whereas where you've then gone over the line with the wax, it would be that first layer, so you still can kind of create, we've done that before with double waxing. So let's say in like a background, you go with one colour and then you wax after it, and then you apply a different colour. So you say you've got yellow on the background, but then you apply wax to the already painted yellow when it's dry. You can then add a different colour, say an orange or a red, and then obviously the bits that you wax would stay yellow, sort of similar to how they were doing it on that process, on the process video of the Japanese batik. Because say if you want dye to stay in, because that's what they did there, wasn't it? They dyed the fabric, applied the wax, and then bleached the fabric again to get the colour out of it. But obviously the bit that was waxed stays the bright colours.
Yeah. I'll carry on for a bit, but I'm not hopeful, but I'll give it a try and see how it goes.
And there's a different methods to dye, and when I was in Hong Kong, I am an art teacher. I used to teach my students to use different methods to dye, and this is one of the methods. We can use string or rubber band and to create, to make it, and this is one of the pattern, you see.
Yes, it's like
tie-dye. Yeah.
And there's some sometimes we use some dye to drop it into the water and then stir it to some pattern, and then you can use a piece of cloth or piece of paper, and then you just put it, cover the pattern, and then you take it up, and then you can dye in some marble pattern, some sort of like some sort of things. And if you have some dye after doing this dyeing, you can use some leftover to do some experiment of different dyeing.
Yeah, so you could use these Procyon dyes to do some tie dyeing, or have a go at ice dyeing. That was quite fascinating to create lots of different effects. But yeah, there's loads of different things you can do as far as different. There's different like processes actually in the way you tie it in a very specific way, like twists and ties and. I do think that you should all come and volunteer the next project that we're doing though, and actually have a go using the hot wax, because it's a really nice process.
Where do the next project?
We don't really know at the minute. We don't know when we'll be able to, because of lockdowns and the COVID situation. We really don't know when we'll be able to, because we were planning, we were hoping it would be soon. We'd be able to get some volunteer days in the studio and get people back in, but obviously things are not really improving at the minute, so we don't really know. But I'm sure summertime, hopefully, we'll be able to.
Where will it take place? Is that still in the studio that we make the rabbit?
Yeah.
It's too far away.
Too far away. Oh, yeah, no, it would be at the Vale in Mosley. But yeah, you live in Salford. Sometimes though, I know that we did one big boutique project we did not last year, the year before. It's so noisy. Which was for Manchester Day Parade, which so you said that you saw you know, the big head Som, and we did a big 10-meter flags silk painting for the hair, and that was actually at Water Plants Depot in Manchester. So that was in the Mayfield Depot in Salford. So sometimes we do stuff that is in more central Manchester. So there are opportunities that aren't just. I'm sorry about the noise, it's dreadful. Right, I'm going to go with the background. I've got a bit more detail to do, but I'm going to go with the background now. I'm going to go. With a purple on the background. That's what I'm going to go for. And you don't have to be shy with the dye, really. Just, I would though, when you go into those areas of wax and when you're meeting other colours, just make sure you've not got loads and loads of dye on your brush, because it will seep into the paper underneath, and it will, yeah, it is likely then to mix with the other colours. But what you can do, if you feel like you've applied too much dye and you're sort of expecting it to bleed in, just grab a bit of the paper and actually put it under the silk So lift up the silk a little bit and just dab some of that excess dye that's bled into the paper underneath. But yeah, it's got a bit quieter now, so I feel like I can talk again. But yeah, we do some projects where we end up working at other people's, other art organisation. And Walk the Plank often do Batik related projects, so they're also a company to keep on your radar if ever you want to volunteer and do any creative things. But they're based it. I think they've got a workshop in Salford actually, but the Mayfield depot, which is Piccadilly, sort of near Piccadilly.
Yeah, I've just put the link to their website in the chat if anyone wants to have a look. Have you been making any more jewellery, Sonia? I don't know if you're there. I know you're on mute. And Kelly, how's the homeschooling going?
Oh, she's just doing gymnastics at the moment.
She's at home, that's great.
The teacher's doing it through a Google Meet session, a video session.
Well, that's
Brilliant.
But I thought it might make her be quiet while I were doing this. But I just keep getting, Mummy, look at this. Mummy, look at this. Mummy, look at this.
This is what I recently done. And I use after making the Christmas ornament, I use the same method to make a bird.
Oh, the
And then
platter.
Oh,
and,
that's beautiful, Sam.
and I make use of what I learned and do something
Different.
some other things. This is recently I made it.
Oh, brilliant.
This is the bird. And the background, I paint the background with
Great, so it pops out.
yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, if you could if you could send me a photo of that, I'll send it on to Gordon so he can see. He'd really like to see that, I'm sure.
Okay.
Your house is going to be like an art gallery before too long.
And I also use the leftover for the lantern, and I make a lamp shade for my lamp.
A lampshade.
That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
and with different different tissue paper, because I got the many different kind of material. This tissue paper is already have some patterns on it, and I use it as a lampshade. This is what I do.
That's brilliant. That reminds me, last week, Catherine mentioned about leftover materials, and I've checked and you're absolutely fine to hang on to everything. So that's absolutely fine. So yes, please do reuse bits and try other things out. And if you if you have any successes, do send me pictures because it's great to see.
It would be good to get, I mean, maybe that's just something we can think about. Either I could get in touch with you to let you know, because we're doing a batik course, a separate batik course, which is like an 8-week course. And for that, we're figuring out how we can get the participants to process, to do the processing of the fabric at home. So, because after this, then is another process of when it's dry. Here we've got a steamer where we then steam the wax out of the fabric, and then we rinse it, and then it is the last process. We then take it to the dry cleaners as well. But we've decided that you don't actually need to do that for when there's glue in the fabric. But we're trying to figure out how we can get safely get the participants to do that process of the steaming at home. But I know I'm watching that the Javanese batik process, they just boiled it, didn't they, and then sort of scooped the wax off the surface of the, I thought that was quite amazing that they then obviously reused that wax. But
Yes, I boil it before.
yeah,
I used to boil it, or put it in the hot water to melt the dye, to melt the wax. And I think we can iron the out by covering a piece of paper over it and then iron it so that the
we have tried that technique before and not really had much success with ironing it. But it is, I'm sure it is possible. But yeah, we've not, maybe with the irons we were using weren't hot enough, or I'm not sure, but we have tried that before. But
okay.
yeah, so either I'll be in touch, because it'd be nice if you could keep them, and then obviously you can display them wherever you like, or you could make a cushion cover out of it, or you could do anything. But also it'd be nice for you to have work that, because at some point the Missing Patch project will start again, and we will actually hopefully make a hot air balloon at some point, and that'd also be nice for your work to be involved in that project. So I think that's just something in the future that we can decide. Either we will get in contact with you and you can send your patches back to us and we can process them and it can be a part of the hot air balloon, or we'll be in touch of how you can possibly process at home and then we can keep them.
Yes.
Sorry, it's so noisy.
It's okay. And if you know when the project start, will you inform me about the details? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Lizzie, if you, I can share details with Lizzie, so you've got that.
This is probably an obvious thing, but obviously where you've taped the silk down flat, you will have to lift the tape up and paint underneath. It does tend to seep under masking tape anyway, but it is good to, because you do want a nice even amount of dye, but you will sort of, I won't worry so much about that on the first coat, because you will have to do a second coat. Sometimes when you say you design, you probably won't find this much because you're not painting a huge amount of fabric, and most of you're not going to have big blocks of colour. But when we are painting, say you're just painting a background colour and you like doing a whole thing with red, the dye just, it depends on temperatures. If it's a really warm day, then the the dye tends to dry quite quickly, and you can then sometimes get watermarks on your fabric. But you can easily sort of get them out by just applying more dye and sort of working your brush to sort of just get those. But you shouldn't find that too much because you're not painting a huge, large surface. I think it's quite nice when you're thinking about what colours you're going to use for specific bits. I think it's quite nice to think about, so say you've got, like on my design here, I've got sort of one kind of central thing, and it's quite nice to think about it, to have the background contrasting to that one main. So I'm using the purple on the background here and yellow and orange for the sun in the centre. It's quite nice to have that contrast. I really like to use blue and orange as contrasting, I think they're, and also red and green obviously is quite nice. That those opposites do contrast each other really nicely. Yeah, it's a shame really that because of the situation at the minute, the hair work has kind of come to a bit of a halt. We're still working at the weekend where a couple of us are coming in and doing bits, but the momentum seems to really have, because Tony, the artist who we were working with, wasn't able to come up. He was supposed to be up last week, sort of finishing the frames and starting thinking about cladding. And it sort of just feels like the moment, because that's not happened and we don't know when that's going to happen. And obviously we were hoping that an event was going to be going ahead at the end of February that we were working towards, and now that's not going to be happening at all. It's just sort of just feel like it's all, yeah, the momentum's definitely dropped, which is just a bit of a shame. We're still doing little bits here and there, but it just feels like it's going to be one of those projects that is going to go on for a while longer.
What's your favourite bit of the process, Lizzie? What do you like doing the most?
I do like the painting. I like both the waxing and the painting. I think they're really nice processes. The steaming also is another good process, and it is an absolute workout, because normally we're doing such big things, and you have to wrap the fabric, and you're just on the floor wrapping the fabric so long, and then wrapping it up, and if you've got, say, quite a few you're doing at the same time, then you're just like up and down all the time. So it's a bit of a workout. But I think just as a process as a whole, it's really nice. But watching that video made me really want to try making copper stamps. I found that quite fascinating, the way that he was like being really accurate, blending the copper into specific, and as well how you think about a design and then think how you're going to translate that to a copper stamp, and how obviously then you want the wax to sit on that stamp in a specific way. So
Yeah,
so
clever.
yeah. It's quite a complicated process though, with so many individual bits to it.
Yeah.
I do like the painting though. It is really satisfying when you've got quite a lot of dye in the fabric and you just watch it bleeding into the fabric. It is really quite nice.
I love that Batik museum as well that was in the documentary, and they were talking about all the different influences, like the Chinese influences and then the sort of Danish and Scandinavian influences. It was really interesting.
Yeah, you don't really think that they would have that, like that fairy tales would have made any impact in sort of an Indonesian art like that. I found that quite fascinating.
Yeah, it was.
Before you do the second coat, I would make sure that the dye is dried, only because when if it's already really wet, so say I went and did a second coat now, you would get a lot more bleeding of the dyes, just because if it's already wet, it's much easier, it's soaked in a lot more and will sort of go under the wax into places you don't want that dye to bleed into. So yeah, just wait till it's dry. I'd take a whole sort of day, so if you were going to come and do the second coat, I'd wait till at least Thursday. I mean, it does dry pretty quick. It literally sounds like the drilling under my feet. Like here, so I'm doing purple on the background, but my plan with the second coat is to use just the red, the magenta and the blue So with the magenta, I'm just going to go with the second coat near the sun. So it's got like red, a more reddy, pinky purple coming away from the sun. And then into the corners, I'm then going to add the blue, which will make a more bluey purple near the edges. And I think it'd just add a little bit of depth.
It's amazing how quickly you've got through that, Lizzie. It shows you can get through it pretty swiftly.
The dye does sort of spread out into the fabric really quite quickly. So it is quite a quick process really when you got to this point. Me and Emma spent the day yesterday mostly watching Perfect Planet, the new David Attenborough series on the iPlayer. And it was just fascinating. There was one bit where they were in the Galapagos with these two different types of iguanas, so land iguanas and marine iguanas. And these land iguanas like risk their lives for 10 days. They go on this trek to the bottom of the crater of this volcano to lay their eggs, to incubate the eggs in the volcano, which was like, so Emrys is watching them like try and get down and they're causing like avalanches of rocks when they're like trying to get down this crater, and he's like panicking, like no, like because he's scared that the iguanas might get hurt. But I just thought that's amazing that they got 10 days trek just to get to, and then they get to the bottom, and there's loads of other female iguanas there trying to nest, and they're all fighting over different bits and I just thought that was fascinating. Yeah, so that's what we did yesterday.
I'll do it, alright.
So I've got most of the, there's a few little bits where you can just see there's not that much dye, like I've not used enough dye, so I'm just sort of just going over those bits where I can still see a bit of white. And then I've just got these little flower designs that I'm going to do. And you can create a pink with the magenta red. You just need to add a little bit of more water. So yeah, if you've got that little bit of urea water left, there's a little bit there, I could just add a little bit of the red to that and it would make a pink, just literally a few drops. So yeah, it's just a watered down version of that magenta. Does make quite a nice pink. In fact, I'm going to do that for my flowers. So I'm literally just going to add maybe a tiny drop, just a couple of drops.
Lizzie,
Hello.
I've been learning about Javan rhinos.
About Java rhinos.
Yeah,
Wow. What have you learnt about them?
that they are endangered species.
Yeah. What does endangered mean? Can you remember?
It means there aren't many left.
It does. Last.
Ella?
There are 60 left.
Only 60.
Yeah,
Awful. I can't tell my little boy that. He'll be very upset. And I bet most of them live in captivity, probably, don't they?
They live in captivity. I think it's 60 in the wild, isn't it?
60 in the wild. That's terrible. Me and my little boy were learning about tapirs last week. And they look a bit like, kind of a bit like pigs. They live in South America, but their closest relatives are rhinos. So they're closely related to the rhinos and the horse. But yeah, they live in South America.
There's a picture. There you go.
they look like donkeys.
Oh, donkeys. That one looks like a donkey, doesn't it? Let's see.
Is this one?
That is a tapir, yeah. Does look a bit like a horse or a pig or something, doesn't it?
Yep.
And I thought it was related to an elephant because it's got a bit of a trunk, but it's actually related to the rhino.
If I can find anything on Twinkle about that, we might have a look at that next.
Yeah.
And there's only 2 white rhinos left in the world. They are going to be extinct. Only 2 white rhinos.
2.
Yeah,
Terrible.
and 2 are females.
Oh.
they are mother and daughters, so they are going to be extinct. I think in a very short period of time.
Oh. Right, and then
Be green. Red.
Nearly done now, just to add in some little bit of oranges to the edges of my sun rays, and then I've just got a little bit of green to do, and then we're nearly done. And I will, I'm going to do a second coat of this, and then I will take a picture and send it you all. I'm not going to lift it up now because it is still wet. So I know you can't really see it all that well on the video.
I love how you've got the sort of face, the different oranges and yellows and reds and stuff. That looks lovely.
Yeah, and if you do have a few more brushes, it is good to have sort of one brush in each of the pots, because dipping them obviously is going to then change the colour. And then if you do accidentally go into the wrong colour, it is a good idea just to quickly rinse it. Yeah, and if there is any area where it's sort of blurred, there are things then you can do about that in the second coat. by adding a more intense colour or a different colour. Yeah, to try and get away from getting those sort of murky brown colours. But I'll just bring the camera, if I can take it off here. I will try and, I think this is the closest I can bring it. Let me see, so I can, sorry, it's going to make it sit there, isn't it? There you go.
Oh, that's quite clear.
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah.
And I probably will go with more of this on my second coat in here. Yeah, and as I said, with the background, to get a bit of depth, I probably will add the magenta pink to the closest bit to the sun here, and then go out to more of and add blue to this, just to get a bit of depth in the background. That's my plan. Anyway, I'll put this back on here. Or maybe I'll just stop sharing my screen if I can. Switch camera. Let's do that. Oh no. Stop share. There we go. Yeah. So that's it really. And as I said, I'll either get your email addresses off Sophie, or get her to email you, as far as sending them back to us if that's what we decide to do, or giving you some information on how you can process it at home, because it would be nice for you to keep something that then you can display, or you could make into a cushion cover or whatever.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Lizzie. That's great. And make sure you send us a picture of how yours finishes up as well, so I can share it with everyone, and vice versa.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is our last session, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us for the past 12 weeks and beyond. For many of you, you've been here right from the beginning. So yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you. And it hasn't been easy. Obviously, we've all been learning online together. So thank you for participating so enthusiastically, and for having lovely chats on the doorstep when I've been dropping your materials. And yeah, thank you for being so up for it and trying something out, because it's been really helpful for Global Grooves as well. We've learned a whole new way of delivering what we do, and working with different people, and so it's been really good for us, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And thanks so much for dealing with all the paperwork as well, because I know there has been a lot of paperwork along the way, and thanks to those of you that have got your learning plans back to me. I do need those, if that's okay, for those that haven't yet. So they have to go back to the funder just so that they know what we've done, and also so you can feed back on your experiences, so we can improve this in the future. This video I'll send this round, of course, as normal, so you can have a look back, and please do send photos of your finished batiks, because we'd love to see them, and anything else like so your collage, which was amazing. I'd love to send that on to Gordon so you can see it being used in a different way. That'd be brilliant. Please do keep in touch with us. So I've mentioned already about signing up to the Global Grooves and Cabasa email list, so you can see when we've got opportunities coming up, because we'd love to get you in the studio. And obviously, when things improve and we can all get together, it'd be great to actually see you in person properly, and so you can have a look around the new Vale and see the new facilities, because we're going to have a whole host of facilities, especially for processes like this. So we're going to have proper dining rooms and steaming rooms and all sorts, so make sure you can come along and have a look at those when they're up and running. Yeah, and do keep in touch.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for the coordination work. Because it's quite nice. I think this kind of workshop is quite nice, because there's no need to bother about the material, all sorts of things. So it's very nice.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, we
Because
want to make
so
it as
convenient,
accessible.
it's big, and then do it.
Yes,
Fun, eh?
definitely.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for participating. Really appreciate it. So yeah, drop me a line and keep in touch and let me know what you get up to next as well, because it'd be great to hear what you go on and do. And hopefully it won't be too long before we see you in person. So
Yes,
Thanks.
looking forward to meeting you all, guys.
yes, properly in the real world. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Lizzie.
Bye.
Bye, Sonia. Take care.
Bye, you too. Take care as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.